Yo, guys, what is up? Moxsy in our episode of Finding Your Vault Hunter, the multi-part series where I break down all the different Vault Hunters in all of the Borderlands games, a series brought to you by Gearbox and 2K. Now, in this episode, we're going to be talking about the playable Vault Hunters in Borderlands 2. The Vault Hunters are the characters that you pick to play as at the start of the game, and knowing which playstyle and which character is going to resonate most with you is a pretty awesome and important decision to make when you're starting out on the game, and I hope to make that decision easier for you today. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So Borderlands 2 really excels as a sequel to Borderlands 1 because it just adds to what made Borderlands 1 so great. It adds more gear, more guns, more areas to go explore, bigger bosses to fight. It has more DLC, it's got more story, and most importantly, it's got more characters to play and more expansive skill trees. The skill trees get really fleshed out in Borderlands 2, where you've got more ways to augment your characters, and every character has more ways to play. And so we're going to break down what those characters are and the different ways to play them. So to start us off, we've got Zero the Assassin. Now, Zero's signature ability or action skill is Deception. This allows you to go invisible, and when you go invisible, you leave behind a decoy of yourself. Enemies will attack that decoy, and then while you're invisible, you kind of have a timer. This timer is going to count down, and whenever you decide to do an action, whether that be hitting an enemy with a melee attack or shooting your gun, the closer you are to your action skill ending, the more damage you're going to deal. So for example, if you do it right before it ends, you're going to get up to 650% melee damage. Now, because Deception only works for a single trigger pull of your gun or a single melee swing, you're wanting to synergize Zero with things that hit once but hit really hard, and one of those things is sniping, and Zero has a whole sniping tree. One of the signature abilities in Zero's sniping tree is Bore, which allows your bullets to pierce enemies, and while you're in Deception, your visor will highlight enemies' crit spots so you can line up a bunch of enemies, and then every time that your bullet pierces an enemy's, it does 100% more damage. And what players will do is they'll line up shots on bosses, particularly where they can hit the same boss multiple times, instantly deleting really high powerful bosses. Next up, Zero also has the capstone ability in the sniping tree, Critical Ascension. As you land more sniper critical hits, you're going to be stacking up more crit damage and gun damage, and then you can go into Deception, line up your crits, and constantly be stacking up these really high powerful sniper shots in the sniping tree. The cunning tree is more focused around Zero's Deception and allows you to apply a death mark to enemies. A death mark will make them take more damage from all sources when you melee them, and then Zero's capstone in the cunning tree, Death Blossom, allows you to throw elemental kunai, which count as melee hits, which will death blossom enemies, and then while you're in Deception, you can shoot out a bunch of kunai, and then those will debuff all the enemies that you are going to attack, and then you can go in and attack them with your pistols or your shotguns or your melee attacks. And lastly, Zero's Bloodshed tree is all about melee damage, stacking up your melee damage as high as possible, and then being able to stay in Deception as much as possible. Zero's capstone skill, Many Must Fall, allows you to, whenever you kill an enemy while you're in Deception with a melee attack, to extend the duration of your Deception by 2 seconds. So you'll kill an enemy with your melee attack, you get 2 seconds, and then you can stay invisible, recloak, hit another enemy with a melee attack, which will kill them, that recloaks you, and what happens is you get these Many Must Fall chain where you can kill an entire room of enemies while you're invisible, just meleeing them, which feels so satisfying to play. Whether you like that long-range, high-damage stealth playstyle with Zero's sniping tree, or that up-close stealth melee tree where you're like backstabbing enemies and dealing tons of damage to them, Zero has a lot of different ways to be played, and it's just so fun. Next up, we've got Axon the Commando. Now, Axon plays like a soldier class in Borderlands 2, and his action skill is called Saber Turret. Now, at base, this turret You deploy it. It's a machine gun turret that will fire at enemies, and it's relatively basic when you first start playing Axon. But what's so cool is all of the ways that you can augment this turret and yourself to fight alongside it. So in Axon's Gorilla Tree, for example, you can increase the amount of shots that the turret shoots per burst. You can add a laser sight to make the turret more accurate. You can add rocket pods to the turret, and the capstone double up allows you to add a second gun that fires slag bullets at enemies. Now, this is so important because slag in Borderlands 2 is really important because it allows you to debuff enemies. Enemies that are slagged will take more damage from you and your teammates, and now instead of having to swap out to a slag weapon or slow a slag grenade, you can just deploy your turret and it will slag everything for you. Axon's gunpowder tree gives you a lot of improvements to your gun skills and also gives you the ability as a capstone nuke, which allows you to, whenever you deploy your turret, to set off a mini nuclear blast that will hit a bunch of enemies. And in Axon's survival tree, you can increase your survivability a lot, allow you to stick turrets to walls, so now you can throw turrets out of enemies' reach, deploy them with a phalanx shield so that the turrets will have a protective shield around them, and you can get a second turret. So you can combine Axon's 2-turret augment, which allows you to throw 2 turrets, with Axon's ability to deploy a nuke whenever you deploy a turret, and now you can double spam turrets that will just deploy nukes and pick them back up, and you can just keep nuking things. There's a lot of different ways to play Axon, but if you're looking for that like gun commando style, where you're using assault rifles, shotguns, have your turret fighting alongside you, and can play a bunch of different roles, Axon is going to be the character for you. Next up, there was Salvador the Gunzerker, and Salvador really changed the game. Salvador's Gunzerking ability allowed you to pull out your secondary weapon and shoot 2 weapons at the same time, while gaining damage resistance and health regen and ammo regeneration, and was all about going crazy with the 2 guns that you're shooting at the same time. Now, Borderlands is a game all about getting really powerful guns, so the ability to use 2 at a time instead of 1 was really strong, and Salvador's Gunlust tree gave Salvador the ability called Money Shot, which the last shot from your magazine would deal increased damage. And Salvador's Rampage tree would be all about conserving your ammo and getting ammo back and not consuming ammo, and so you could have these 2 guns shooting as much as you possibly could, and then when they'd get down to the last bullet, a lot of the times they would not consume ammo or get ammo back, and then you would keep doing this massively increased damage from the Money Shot ability. And then Salvador's Capstone No Kill Like Overkill would allow you, if you overkilled an enemy, meaning that you dealt more damage to them than they had health, that overkill damage would get stored and then added to your next shots, and so you could just go absolutely wild, spraying enemies with bullets. Salvador's Brawn tree made Salvador a tank, giving you tons of damage resistance and health regeneration, so you could get up in enemies' faces. And if you liked playing Brick from Borderlands 1, or want to play that up-in-your-face kind of tank character, Salvador was definitely the class for you. The thing about tanks is usually you think that they don't deal as much damage, but Salvador did plenty of damage. Next up, we've got Gage. Now, if Axton is the like commando, place a turret down that's stationary vibe, Gage is the Mechromancer. She's a little bit more experimental, and her Vault Hunter action skill is called Death Trap. Now, Death Trap allows you to summon Death Trap, which is your companion robot that is not stationary. It will follow you along and fight alongside you, and you can augment Death Trap. Similar to how Axon can augment his turret, you can augment Death Trap with a ton of different abilities. The Best Friends Forever tree for Gage is really focused on improving your Death Trap. You can have your Death Trap restore shields, give your Death Trap more duration so it stays up longer. You get the Close Enough skill so your bullets can ricochet, and the big capstone ability is called Sharing is Caring. What this does is allows you to get a copy of your shield on Death Trap. Now, shields in Borderlands 2 are really strong. There's some really powerful melee roid shields. There's powerful Nova shields, and you can give those shields to your Death Trap so that you both can be wearing them. Little Big Trouble in Gage's skill tree is a lot about focused on dealing shock damage. The Interspersed Outburst skill allows you to deal bonus slag damage to enemies, which is really nice. And then the Make It Sparkle allows you to actually shoot Death Trap, giving Death Trap 200% bonus damage of the element that you shoot Death Trap with. And lastly, Gage's probably most famous skill tree is called Ordered Chaos. Now, the Ordered Chaos skill tree is famous because of the skill Anarchy. This allows you, whenever you reload or you kill an enemy, you're going to get a stack of Anarchy. Anarchy increases your gun damage but it reduces your accuracy, and you can get a ton of stacks of Anarchy. What Anarchy allows you to do is absolutely skyrocket your gun damage at the cost of accuracy. However, Gage has skills like Close Enough that allows your bullets to ricochet, skills that reduce your mag size, and skills that allow you to build up Anarchy stacks faster, and skills like the Nth Degree, which allows the hits that hit enemies will ricochet towards more enemies, allows you to basically cover a room in bullets, and it doesn't really matter if you're missing because the bullets are going to be ricocheting and flinging towards nearby enemies and dealing hundreds of percents of more damage. It's a really powerful ability that Gage uses really well. Next up, we've got 𝐏𝐀𝐍𝐃. Now, 𝐏𝐀𝐍𝐃 is a bit more outside the box than the other Vault Hunters. He does things a little bit less traditionally than you might think. Now, 𝐏𝐀𝐍𝐃 is the Psycho, and his action skill is called 𝐵UZZ Rampage. This increases your melee damage by 400%. It lasts 15 seconds. You get full health, increased movement speed while you're in it, and you basically just run at enemies with a buzz axe that you can smack them with. Now, 𝐏𝐀𝐍𝐃's skill trees really play into this fantasy of being this like up-close psychopath. And starting with the Mania tree, you can get increased health and increase the amount of time that your shields are down. Now, why would you want your shields to be down on a character? Shields help you survive. Well, 𝐏𝐀𝐍𝐃, you actually want to be taking health damage a lot. One of the reasons for that is because there are roid shields in Borderlands 2, and roid shields only give you a benefit when your shields are actually depleted. So 𝐏𝐀𝐍𝐃, having increased the delay of your shields, allows you to take more benefit out of these shields that have benefits when your shields are down. And 𝐏𝐀𝐍𝐃's skill Salt the Wound, whenever you're taking direct health damage, you're going to get stacks that build up melee damage and shotgun damage. And it's a lot of melee damage and shotgun damage, so you want to be taking health damage. 𝐏𝐀𝐍𝐃's Release the Beast skill also really plays into this. Whenever you get below 33% health, if you activate your 𝐵UZZ Rampage, all of a sudden you turn into a badass psycho mutant. This restores 100% of your health. It restores the cooldowns, so you can use your 𝐵UZZ Rampage again. And when you're in this 𝐵UZZ Rampage, the psycho badass, you're going to get increased melee damage and 100% increased damage resistance. This makes you really hard to kill because anytime enemies get you down to almost killing you, boom, 𝐵UZZ Rampage, you are now a badass psycho that no one can kill, and then when it ends, you just have the cooldown again. So you just wait for enemies to get close to killing you, and it just leads to this like unkillable psycho fantasy. 𝐏𝐀𝐍𝐃's Bloodlust tree really plays into the fantasy of explosions. You can add dynamite to your buzz axe so that you can throw it and explode enemies. You can get tons of increased gun damage and the chance to get more grenades and deal more damage with your grenades. However, the big skill in the Bloodlust tree is Bloodsplosion. This allows you to create an elemental nova whenever you overkill an enemy, which allows you to boom, you can swing your axe and kill one small enemy, which will explode to kill another enemy, and you can cascade an entire screen of enemies just exploding in bloody novas. It's just such a fitting skill for this psycho, and it's really cool to watch an entire room explode in blood explosions. And lastly, 𝐏𝐀𝐍𝐃's Hellborn tree is all about fire damage. Now, 𝐏𝐀𝐍𝐃 actually wants to set himself on fire with the Hellborn tree. You get a ton of abilities that you're going to be stacking up while you're burning. You're going to be taking less damage while you're burning. You get the ability to spew fire out of your mouth. And the Raving Retribution capstone is while you're on fire, whenever you take damage, you send out homing fireballs. So you're just running around this psycho that's literally lighting themselves on fire, sending out fireballs that you're going to be healing from all of your fire damage, dealing increased fire damage. It's just a crazy playstyle, and that's why I said 𝐏𝐀𝐍𝐃's a little bit out of the box, a little less traditional than some of the other Vault Hunters, but he's got so many cool, interesting ways to play. Next up, we've got Maya. Now, Maya is the Siren in Borderlands 2, and she is my favorite and most played character. All of the characters are so good. I've played all of them. However, I really like Maya because she synergizes so well with elemental damage, and elemental damage is still to this day my favorite aspect of the Borderlands games. I love seeing all the elemental effects on enemies, and Maya does it so well. She's a step up, in my opinion, from Lilith, and her action skill, Phase Lock, gets so cool. Now, Phase Lock is her action skill that allows you to phase lock an enemy in place. What this does is it hovers them above the battlefield where they can't fight back. And so when you first start out, it's simply a way to stop enemies from fighting back for you to get free critical hits on them. But as you play Maya more and more, it evolves into something entirely else. Now, my personal favorite skill tree on Maya was called Cataclysm. this was all about elemental damage. You had the skill that was called Cloud Kill, that whenever you shoot an enemy, you spawn a corrosive damage cloud on them that will hover and deal tons of corrosive damage to them. You've also got Helios, which whenever you phase lock enemies, you create a fire explosion around them. And you've also got the Chain Reaction skill that whenever you have an enemy phase locked, all of your bullets can ricochet. And I will speak more in more of these episodes about how much I love the ricochet skills in the Borderlands franchise. You've also got the Blight Phoenix skill, which allows whenever you kill an enemy to get the Phoenix wings that will constantly deal fire and corrosive damage to nearby enemies. But my favorite skill, the capstone skill, Rune. Whenever you phase lock an enemy, you're going to slag, electrocute, and corrode all of the enemies nearby. And Maya also gets the Converge skill in the motion skill tree, which I like pairing with this. Now, Rune applies all of these elements to all these enemies, but only to enemies that are nearby. However, Converge allows you to create a singularity whenever you phase lock an enemy. And so you can phase lock an enemy, create this singularity that pulls in everyone on screen for you, and then you've got Chain Reaction, so all of your bullets are going to be bouncing, and then you've got Cloud Kill, so you could trigger these cloud storms of damage, and then you've got Rune. Whenever you pull all those enemies in, all of them are going to get slagged, electrocuted, and corroded, and slag is a massive debuff. And it was just so awesome watching enemies fly in from the corners of the screen to all get hit by all of this elemental damage, and then I would just shoot my SMG into the crowd and everything would die. I just loved that, like, visual. Maya's also got the subsequence ability in her motion tree, which allows the phase lock to now, once you kill an enemy, to seek out more enemies. So now you've got multiple of these big explosion chains happening. And then Thought Lock allows you to actually possess enemies, increasing phase lock's duration, and the person that you phase lock is going to shoot back at enemies. So now you've got an ally fighting on your side. Now, these were all really cool, but another really cool facet of Maya is her ability to be played as a team. And like I said earlier, I really like playing co-op with my little sister, and having her play Maya originally was just so helpful because she could keep me alive. Maya's Harmony tree allows you to create these healing orbs whenever you phase lock an enemy that dies. She's got the res ability that whenever you go into fight for your life, which is a mechanic in Borderlands, that if you ever die, you're not actually out of the fight. You need to get a kill. You'll be in like a down state, and if you get a kill, you can come back to life. However, sometimes when you're fighting a boss, that isn't really possible. And so res allows you to instantly revive your teammates with your phase lock. We've also got skills that you can shoot your teammates to heal them. And the Harmony capstone was called Scorn, which allows you to like Kamehameha a slag ball at your enemies that would cover everyone in slag, increasing your damage that you're going to deal to them. Guys, that is going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed this little breakdown of the different Vault Hunters and the cool synergies and abilities they bring to the table. There really is no wrong choice. They're all very, very strong. And if you're diving into Borderlands 2 for the first time, I wish you the best. There's so much resources and videos and guides out there if you're confused or want any more help. And I hope you enjoy and stay tuned for our episode 3, where we're going to be diving into the pre-sequel and the Vault Hunters in that game. I'll catch y'all in the next one, guys. Take care. Peace.